Hello and welcome to the Stormwater Construction General Permit System how-to video. In this video we're going to show you how to enter and submit a termination for the permit record once the site is stabilized and ready to be terminated, and the operator submits a notice of termination form which looks like this. So they may or may not let you know ahead of time what the general permit registration statement number was or what the permit number is. So sometimes the submitter will leave that out. That's okay though. We can either look it up by the permit number, or if it has kind of a more unique name, you could look up the permit record by the construction activity. So we're going to go into the system and look up Mudslide Mall, which is our example permit that we've done a transfer, a modification, and all that good stuff. So we're going to want to open up the active permit record and just take a minute here to search and make sure that there's nothing pending right now. So if there were to be an entry that said modification in progress or modification submitted, that means that it hasn't been issued and it's just kind of lingering there. So you want to make sure everything's closed out. There's no maintenance fees due, no fees due to the VSMP authority. Once everything is kind of finished and there's been a final inspection and it's ready to be terminated in the system, go ahead to the active permit record and open that up. And then notice down here we've got at the bottom the DEQ classification is active. So we have the right record pulled up. And then we're going to use these tabs over here, the termination information as well as the permanent control measures. So to initiate the termination itself, just start with that tab. And they'll let you know on the registration statement, the notice of termination form corresponds these 4 options with the system here. So for this one they selected type A is yes and the rest are no. So just go through that. The form also has an entry for a regional stormwater plan or nutrient credits. So you want to just make sure that if they did have nutrient credits, they put that on the form. If not, most of the time they're just going to have the permanent control measures, which we'll show you in just a second. So we can go ahead and enter the termination received date and hit save, and that is going to be what initiates the transfer in the system. So once we enter the termination received date, which is really the date that you first receive the notice of termination form. You can also use the termination complete date for the day that the submittal is actually completed. So a lot of times with terminations, there will be other documents requested, like the as-builts or additional information about the permanent control measures. For this case, we're just going to enter today to keep it consistent, and we'll hit save. And then now that the save is successful, we'll see that we'll go back and search for the permit and see that it's now classified as still active, but the status is a termination in progress. So you know that you've at least, just by looking at this, received a termination. And just like with the modifications and the transfers of ownership, if for whatever reason this is entered in error, until it's submitted to DEQ for approval, you can still hit the delete button or edit any of this data. And when you hit that delete button, it's like the data was never entered, so it'll go back to an active permit record and, like it said before, transferred issued. Now, if there were to be a regional stormwater plan for this termination, you would hit yes, And then the same data entry rules for entering a registration statement would apply. So if you haven't seen that video, you could go back to that. Just see how the data should be entered using abbreviations and things like that, or look it up in the Stormwater Construction General Permit System Manual. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Just enter everything that is on the termination form. Same thing with the perpetual nutrient credits. So if they did purchase nutrient credits, you would just look up the name and then enter how many credits they acquired for the site. And then in most cases, you're just going to have permanent control measures. So this is saying that I have unsaved changes. So I'd want to hit save. And then continue on to permanent control measures. So here is the page where you enter the permanent control measures, or BMPs. So I'm going to go back to our notice of termination form, scroll down to the bottom, and they entered what permanent control measures they used for the site. So you would enter that data just as it appears right in here, click the add button to make a new entry. And you would do this for each individual permanent control measure. If they use up all the fields on the form itself, they might attach an additional list. So I'm just going to pause this right now, enter all the data so you can see what it looks like, and then be right back. Okay, so now that you have all of the data entered that's required, go ahead and hit save. And again, you'll do that for every permanent control measure on the site. Once you go back and you've had everything administratively that you need to collect as far as documentation for the termination, maintenance agreement, anything like that, go ahead and go back and just double check the termination information as well as the permanent control measures. And if everything is ready to go, you can go ahead and hit submit termination. Once you hit submit termination, again, the status is going to change in the system from in progress to submitted, and it'll go to DEQ for approval. After you hit submit termination, you won't be able to go back and edit any of these fields. You'll get this validation results page that lets you know that there were no errors, and you can submit it. And at this point, you'll also get an email notification to the VSMP authority that DEQ has received the termination and that we will review and approve it. And then what we do is go into the termination information. We look over that and approve it, and we'll enter the termination letter date, which would be today, and hit save. And then once DEQ has approved of the termination, the operator will get a termination letter, as well as the VSMP authority will get a termination letter, either mailed if they didn't provide an email address, or via email. And then when that is all said and done, we can go back to the search page and look up that permit that we've been working on again. And once it loads, we'll see that all of the entries are in history, and the last one is actually terminated. And it's going to be terminated in the newest operator name, since we have gone through a modification as well as a transfer of ownership. So again, we went through the termination, entered everything for the permanent control measures, as well as the reason for terminating given on the registration statement. If there were any perpetual nutrient credit trading or regional BMPs used, you would enter that as well. Submit to DEQ for approval, and then when DEQ approves, you'll receive the termination accepted official letter.